Are we live? There we go. Alexander here, Dragon Scales VR. We are going through it all the time. It's been a long path here at Dragon Scales VR. Very strange journey that I've been on. I don't know if I've told the story officially on the channel here, so I'd like to get into that a little bit and tell you potentially the most interesting, strange story that you'll ever hear about the company. You hear some of those what would you say, the startups like the Microsoft, how it got going, the Facebook, how it got going, all those, famous people that made it big during the certain specific times. And they made it big with, a very small $200,000 donation from their parents. And it's like, well, that helps a little bit. Parents' friend that funded Microsoft. Nobody gets there. Nobody gets there on just hard work alone. That's not how it works. You have to have capital. You have to have backing. You have to You have to show somebody else with that kind of muscle behind it that you can succeed. And if you can show them and convince them that you're going to make them lots of money, then then you can build something amazing. But building something amazing alone does not happen. That's why you don't see any other companies doing that stuff. It's too hard to compete with that market space. Anywho, that being said, I used to be a security officer. My hat reads gunpoint. That's the hat that I used to wear when I worked security. During the pandemic, I worked security. During the riots that took place around the US, I worked security. I used to watch banks overnight, sometimes stationed next to retired sheriffs, and terrifying. Terrifying in a different way. I mean, it was exciting, it was exhilarating, and it paid better than any other stuff that was around here. Working as a security lead, I think I was making 1850 when I left, and doing these overnight jobs for banks, watching the place or hospitals. I'd get like $20 an hour, and that was the best at the time. Nowadays, if you're not making 15 an hour, it's a joke. If you're not making 20 an hour, it's really not paying bills, and the rent prices keep going up. So not a whole lot of space for decent wages anywhere. But anything local you look at, yeah, it's always like we can give you 12 an hour, and I'm like, that's not even pay. Not, not volunteering at your company. I need to be paid. Anyways, I work security, and while I was working security, I had a lot of free time. So I had a friend that reached out and he said, "Hey, when you get time, can you look up this whole cryptocurrency thing? Because I want to get into it." That was back before it got real big, before the Doge hype. Oh man. So I got into it and I started looking into it and I got involved in some of these Twitter groups, and the way that the algorithm runs, the more you interact with, the more you see. So the more that I started checking these crypto things, the more I started seeing it and seeing it until that was my entire life on social media. Anywhere I went was crypto. And I started running with some of these groups, and they were like, we're going to do this stuff, and we're going to go to these pages, we're going to post this stuff, and we're going to share these links, and we're going to report back, and we're all going to high five and celebrate and talk about what we did. I was like, okay, so they're, you know, later on, I'm going to use a lot of terms that are regular to me, but new to people outside the scene. So they called it shit posting a lot of times because you just spam links and shit, and none of it really matters that much, but it's just to get some eyes on the project. And I ran with the Dogecoin people for a while, early on, very early on, before Elon even existed as a human being, before Joe Rogan even existed. Holy cow! Anyways, we get into all this stuff. We're doing the Doge hype. Eventually, I ran into a group that was Pika token. That was the one my friend asked me about. He said, "Can you figure out this Pokemon token? I think it's going to be big. I want to know more about it, and I want to know how to get it." So I'm looking up how to get it, and I was like, man, this is really complicated. I was like, okay, you need a crypto wallet, which is like it's like a username and password on an account or a database that is detached from standard databases. It's not run on like the open web. It's like run on Web 3, but it's all backed with Web 2 anyway, so it's the same crap. It's just a lot of fancy terminology to hide the fact that it's really not all that amazing. So you have an account and a login, and you have to put money into a platform, which they call it on ramping and off ramping when you transfer money from US into crypto. So on ramping, you would have to have a platform where you can buy cryptocurrency. Usually they only deal in the standard like high frequency trades. So the tiny ones like the Pokemon tokens, they don't deal with those. You can't get those directly. So you would have to transfer your money into an account like Kraken or the other crypto.com or whatever platform. You would have to use their platform to purchase what you would call like Ethereum or Binance, which we stopped dealing Binance in the US because of all kinds of other issues. But so we dealt with Ethereum. That was kind of like the West's crypto. And once you bought that on the platform, you could transfer it to a crypto wallet, which was like your username and password on this like separate system. Your wallet would be entirely yours, but obviously you don't manage the database. So it was a whole system of its own. It's a lot to get into. But you transfer it to that wallet. Then you use that wallet to go to the website you purchase off of the blockchain, which is like almost like a more secure database that's kind of detached from everything and it's only used for specific purposes. So some things can be done, other things can't be done, but if you know what you're doing technically with enough time and numbers and everything, you could figure it out, you could do it. It's just it's very difficult to hack any of it because it has a lot of encryption because there's a lot of numbers involved in the process. And there's yeah, I mean the passcodes are massive too, so it helps. Anyhow, you transfer money on, you use your crypto wallet to buy stuff, and then if the price goes up, you sell it from your crypto wallet. You get back the Ethereum, which you then have to transfer into one of these off-ramping platforms like Kraken or crypto.com, and then you have to sell it for USD. And then what ends up happening is these conglomerate parties don't report the information like they're supposed to. And because everybody's been fired nowadays, nobody looks into it. So there's hundreds of millions of dollars just across various platforms that are so massively traded that there's almost no way to keep track of it all. You'd have to have a complete list of every single crypto to US money transfer on these platforms to even have an idea of how much money was gained or lost. You'd have to have user IDs to like show the gains and the overall positive and negative. And here was another problem is people started paying with those currencies, meaning that if you had an income of $5,000 in crypto, the off-ramping platform would show you putting whatever you put on there for gas fees. The whole nother system we'll get into. It's kind of like tipping the network for being able to use it. And so anyways, you'd have to use money on there just to get your money out of there. It was a mess. It was a mess. And people are like, it's more secure. I'm like, it's actually just digital transfers with good encryption. A bank with good encryption does the same thing, essentially. And a lot of the crypto shitters, the people that think they know everything about crypto, they would hound you and fight you on every single thing tooth and nail just to be a little bit better off securing their stance that they'll make money if they are in crypto. And then as we saw, the entire market that was into the stocks started pushing into crypto, and now it's all the same crap because it's the same investors in both sides. So when the stock market does bad, people sell the crypto to offset it, and it becomes the same effect in that market. which means that the markets are so heavily tied together by the amount of conglomerate investors that are in the same markets. It's all the same shit. The stock market goes down, crypto goes down every time. It has to now, which makes it irrelevant, which makes it a completely useless platform. Because it's so heavily used, it's useless. When it was a couple of people here and there with good ideas and good intentions, it was a really awesome crowdfunding platform. But then the problem you had is you'd get 400 projects all backed by random scammers in India, and they would all do as best as they could to flood the market and make it look legitimate. They'd get a website, they'd get the pages up, they'd make the thing, they'd get all the stuff, they copy it in, and they make it look on the surface like it's legit. And then what happens with that? They get $20,000 into the project and they sell it immediately and they just dump the entire thing, and every investor loses all their money. And they think, oh, well, it looked good, so I'll throw a couple $100 in there. Well, 1,000 people throw a couple $100, they sell it off, and that's money in the bank for the scammers. And then everybody else says, oh, well, I made 1,000 over here, so I lost 200 here, not a big deal, whatever. And so you had a lot of people that were like, I'm still making money. And it was paying so well for the scammers that even more scammers came in. Pretty soon you had American companies that were like, we could do the scam bigger and better, and we can buy advertising and we can pump it up to the sky and have 1 billion people, and then it just crashes and plummets. So then we saw this amazing thing, which most people have at least heard of at this point, that was Dogecoin. And that was exactly what happened with that. Everybody got in on it, tons of excitement. The hype drove the price way up. I bought it somewhere on the way up, and it got way up here. And I think I had sold it on the way up, and then I might have bought more later. Price peaked, and then it started crashing. It peaked at like, I don't know, 70 or 80 cents per, and they were thinking it'll go to $1, and it never made it. So anyways, people started selling, and then they saw the price dropping, which caused people to panic and then sell it because they saw the price dropping, forcing the price to drop more, which then panicked more people, which made the price plummet even further. It just continued. And so there's a snowball effect in both directions. Snowball effect up, the market runs out of investors, snowball effect down. And then you have investors that come in and they say, oh, it just crashed a bunch, it's got to go up again at some point. So they buy, and you end up seeing a chart that comes down and it bounces. It bounces because people start buying back in. And sometimes it's a big bounce, sometimes it's a very quick bounce. But generally, people sell past it and it destroys everything, anyways. So as it was dumping back down, I think I had some at like maybe, I don't know, 55 cents a share, and I sold everything. I was like, it's not going back. And then I had friends that waited it out and they said, I'm gonna hang in there. And it went down to like a fraction of a penny. And then over the next year it returned to maybe 7 cents a share, maybe. At the very best peak after that, it might have gone to 14 cents a share, but it never even returned to the 55 that I sold it at. So I was like, wow, I'm blessed I got out of that. So then the people that have it, they have to try to build value back in it. But because they were pushing themselves as, we don't have a leader, we don't have a team, we don't have anybody doing anything, it also meant that, well, you don't have a leader or a team or anybody doing anything. So all of your backing is aimless. Like, what are you guys doing for the year? Well, we don't know because we didn't really plan anything. So we have a couple of people that want to do this and they're going to try to do this, and there's nobody to be held accountable because nobody's leading it. Like a bunch of pirates all together, like, we're going to do this. And it's like, okay, but you have no leader and no direction and no guidelines, and nobody's held accountable if you don't do it. Seems legit, yeah. Let's all invest in that. That sounds great. It'd be like if like a couple of guys got together and said they're going to try to push something as a new product for a store that they don't have any involvement in. Like, well, should you invest in the store? Like, I don't know if it would even have any effect. Maybe they wouldn't even get into the store. Maybe The people that run the store, maybe they'd be like, nah, you don't know. The point is when there's no accountability, there's nobody to answer when things don't go well. There's nobody to be held accountable. And so nobody has to tell the truth. Nobody has to face the consequences. If things don't work out, it's not landing on someone's name. It's just, oh well, for everybody. So that was a problem. And then you had these projects where people were obsessed with, I'm not going to be doxxed. I'm going to be a secret identity. And it's like, well, why would you do that? Well, because you're just scamming people. That's it. All the projects that I worked in that had doxed workers, people that had actual goals and, they were real people. They had ambitions. They wanted to build real things. And because real things don't sell the same as hype and bullshit, they actually didn't do as well. All the hype and bullshit did better. All the scams from scam artists just slapping together websites and fake stuff, they did better than the people that were really trying to do legitimate things. One of the people trying to do legitimate things was me. I came up with Dragon Scales VR. Originally, I wanted it to be a crypto project, and the crypto tag was DSVR. And I believe I still have the tokens for that, the Dragon Scales VR crypto tokens. And I never released them because I had maybe 100 people watching what I was doing, and I put it out there and I said, yeah, we're going to set up a project and we're going to be using this token to fund it, and then we're going to be putting our profits back into this token endlessly. So anybody who invests with it will residually make money as we make money because we'll be putting that back into the pool. And I said, well, that's genius because we'll just keep putting profits back into it and building that revenue. Nobody cared. Nobody gave a shit. I showed a ton of people that, and everybody that I talked to was amazed. They were like, yeah, this is great. It's going to be amazing. Like, all right, well, would you be interested in buying these if I started pre-selling them? Nobody. Not a single person. So I was like, well, what's the point? I'm not going to release it then. So I said, well, I'll hold it until we have more to release. And I said, well, first let's start showing revenue. And so we went out and got our first client. Now, there was some other stuff before this where I was a freelance marketing professional in the scene for a while. That was wild. That was a wild, wild ride. So many things happened that were unpredictable, and so many things changed in the market. And I got screwed. I got screwed. I made people hundreds of millions of dollars all over the place, and I got next to nothing. I paid my bills for a couple of years. That was it. I paid my bills. I put together a massive development team using the DSVR development company, and I got screwed. We ended up getting rid of one of our clients. It was a massive part of the team's revenue, and I ended up spending all my money out of pocket taking care of my team while I made sure everybody found regular jobs again, while we got everybody back on their feet, while I took care of people's families. And at the end of all of this, that's it. I got a thank you. I lost everything, and I don't even have a way of showing people what happened. And then I go to pay taxes on it, and they're like, no, you didn't. You didn't make that. Like, well, I'd like to. I'd like to claim that I made this. And they're like, no, wasn't reported. Like, well, how do I report it? And they're like, there's no record. I'm like, okay, so I just never made anything. Just everything's make believe. And that's pretty much what happened is they were like, well, cryptocurrency is like not real money. So anything you did in there was just Monopoly. You were just playing Monopoly. So the hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue that were brought to my employers just doesn't exist. They just pretend like, nope, didn't happen. It's so weird. Anyways, so we went into development full time. We said, let's work on games, let's work on this, let's work on that. And it's just been a wild ride. And we finally left the virtual reality market because it's so dried up and empty. We went over to we went over to Steam. We said, well, why don't we just take all the knowledge we have in development because now we're fluent in Unity. Why don't we go to Steam and build a game? And we can port it to VR if we want to, because that's our happy space. That's where we were best. That's where we were the number one development company for virtual reality. And we got replaced by outsourcing scam artists from America. There's scammer companies that are like, we develop, and then when you contact them, they set you up with a company in India that develops, and they pay the American company, and then the American company makes money, but they don't develop. They're just like professional outsourcers. And everybody in the scene knows this. If you want a game built, you call an American company, and they call somebody in India who they've worked with, and they have four dudes in India do it for $10 a day, and they make this product that's half-assed and duct taped together, but it technically functions. And the American company makes a whole pocket full of money, and they do zero work. And that's the American dream these days. It's to do as much revenue as possible without lifting a finger. And then they talk out their ass. They know nothing about what they're doing because it's all developed by other people. But those other people have no way of developing on their own because they don't have the money to advertise. They can't compete with these other people. If you look up virtual reality development, any of the top companies, they're all outsourcers. And I tried finding them. I thought, well, there's got to be some other American companies that develop in VR. So I looked for them, all my competitors. College kids that went out of business, small time companies that went out of business, a couple of people who bought a mocap soup and went out of business. They were like, we'll do mocap and then we'll like port it in and we'll make all these animations. And then they got replaced by outsourcing. So none of it exists. And I was like, there's got to be some. This is crazy. The more I looked, the more I was like, nope. So we were on VR chat because of the VR functionality. It was a good platform to test things. And because of that, I kept running into these amazing builds. I mean, just beautiful houses you could walk through and every detail affected. And I was like, the craftsmanship that went into this is just amazing. And I kept thinking, who's building this? Who's building all these things? Because I don't find anybody who's an expert in here except me. And I couldn't figure it out. It took me like 2 years to figure out the answer to that question. Finally, when I started reaching out and just searching desperately for any other company who did any development, I ran into the adult entertainment industry where they had some American companies doing development. And when I started checking their resources, I discovered that they rip things from video games and they use all those rips to do whatever. And they make fan made anything. And so I start checking their databases and I go, oh my God, every single build that I could find in VR that was amazing was stolen from a video game or a development company in the past who did the work for another reason, had their stuff stolen, and then ported over to VR chat and uploaded as if somebody built it. And it was built by a professional development company somewhere else for a different purpose. So I kept finding all these like builds as if people were building them in VR. Nobody had built any of them. Every single one was stolen. And so most of VR chat is a pirating platform where people can virtually tour stolen content from other video games. And I thought, man, that is terrifyingly just eye opening, stunning. I mean, just couldn't get over that. That knocked me out. And so to think, well, I can build in Blender and I can make these beautiful architectural marvels. I can port them into VR and stylize everything. I'm alone. I'm alone out here doing this. And I never thought I was the only one. I always thought, well, there's other people doing stuff too. And once in a while, you run into somebody and they're amateur, and it's no offense to them. They just didn't put the time in like I've put the time in. It's okay. Everyone has a different journey. Some people are amazing too. And a lot of the amazing people, they work with a development company or they have enough revenue supporting them to where they can do it already. But the ones that are just getting started, they're all amateur. They're amateurs. They don't know half the things with like building in Blender. They don't know half the stuff with setting up custom shaders in Unity. And it's a whole different world now. With that being said, we looked at the clientele. We said, well, VR chat is not the place to be any longer because there's only 80,000 people at the very most. We'll never get more than 80,000 people. We looked at Steam and they said, well, our clientele base is closer to 800,000 people. So I said, if we switch to building video games instead of VR, we can be seen by 10 times the people. I was like, that's a no-brainer. We have to do it. We have to do it for survival as a brand. And it's like, I run into people where, oh, well, here's how you market yourself. You don't think for the last 5 years we've had an active Twitter account? You don't think we've had multiple active Twitter accounts? You don't think we've had multiple social medias that I've posted on LinkedIn, that I've posted on Facebook? We've had multiple pages for things. We've had YouTube videos. We've had TikTok. We've done live streaming. Nobody has seen any of our content ever. I had one horror game that I started and it was so empty and so dead, and I streamed the development of it for almost a month and then I gave up. I came back a year later and thousands of people had visited after I stopped, saw what I was doing, and they were amazed and they followed it and they were ready, and I didn't know. I didn't know for like a whole year. But we got nothing when we were trying for so long. It was devastating. And then I look at these other people doing it and I say, well, how do they do it? And then when you research them, it's like, well, this was a developer who is from the Game of Thrones series. And it's like, oh, okay, so he had a full audience that followed him beforehand. This is the developer who left Oblivion. Oh, okay, so he had a full audience following him. Like, the people that were famous are doing good on their projects because they were famous. They were famous first, and then they did a project. If Martha Stewart does a virtual reality build, she's going to get millions of people seeing it because she's Martha Stewart. It's just how it works. And people are so against it, and they're so lost in what they think is right that they can't even see that it doesn't make any sense. And it's like, I follow other people too to see if this is true. I follow other small companies, and they go nowhere. They go nowhere for years and years and years. And then they go nowhere until they give up. Until either they give up or they drop to the ground. And I hear the same thing everywhere I go. Well, you got to do social media marketing. Well, you got to do that. It's the same horseshit every single time. And it's always wrong. And it's like, I don't know how to tell people. Like, we did it already. We did the active social media accounts, multiple accounts. We did the boosting, the promoting. I advertised months and months and months and months, and we went nowhere because we didn't put the kind of money that Meta is putting in. We didn't put $1 billion into it. We put hard-earned American, work from home money into it. We put a couple hundred here and there into it. It's like, no, you got to have $20,000 for a marketing campaign. We didn't have $20,000 for a marketing campaign, It's like, sorry, That's reality. I mean, you see what they're doing nowadays. Like, you go on TV. Who are the top advertisers? You got like State Farm Insurance. How do you think they make their money? How do you think they get rich? How do you think they can afford commercials on TV all the time? And, 7 offices in your hometown. Like, because they're winning. Because they're making so much effing money off their customers that are getting screwed on the deal that they can afford to blow a couple $1,000,000 on a Super Bowl commercial just to be there to be relevant. And nobody sees it. Like, that's corporate America. It's like, I'm sorry, but it's just how it is. Like, when you win at Monopoly, those last couple of minutes of the Monopoly game are just everybody with their hands in their pockets, like, piece of shit. You just play until you hit a property and lose all your money. And that's the market we're living in nowadays. I wish it wasn't, but it is. So I walk into this market and I say, well, how do we become relevant? The only place I've seen anyone at all in video games become relevant is by being on a platform that is so massive that it draws attention to it. And there's a couple of those. Steam is probably the number one. So when Steam does something, it's probably the only place worth being as a developer. If you go on, coolnewgames.org, you're not going to get anybody. Your customer base will not support you even making the game. You won't even get $100. Like, it's so bad. And then you think, well, how much do you want to sell your game for? Well, let's say you sell it for $5 and now you hit 100 people. That's pretty good. 100 people you don't know find your game and play it and purchase it. You make $500, you can't even pay rent for the month. So how do you expect that to support you for the year? Like, oh, well, maybe over time, it's going to get less on the platforms. But Steam with 800,000 people, you get some real metrics to work with. You think, well, if half of those people play my game and it's a demo, you're looking at 400,000 and you say, okay, well, maybe 10% of them buy. 40,000 people buying a game. If I sell it for $10, that is massive. That pays the bills. You'll be okay with that. Even if you get a fraction of that, that's pretty good still. But it's like, those are multiple $100,000 metrics we're talking about. When we publish stuff on VR chat, we get 1,000 views, and over the next month, it gets buried in the algorithms. Completely buried. 1,000 people see it, 500 people favorite it, gone. It will never surface again. Nobody will ever see it again. We can do updates and we'll get a small portion pulled back to check it out. We'll get a couple new views and that is it. But for the ones that are trending, if they put out new content, that will be trending because their content is trending. And if they put out more new content, that will then become trending because that's trending. And if they put out enough, they'll just give them their own damn channel. And they'll be like, yeah, these guys are just putting out everything. So here's a whole channel dedicated to them because they're so popular. And usually the people doing the stuff, like the stuff I see really popular, it's clickbait. Clickbait crap. It's a couple of kids thought this word was funny. So now, like, I don't know, they just come out with a character or something. They're like, here's a bear made of bars of soap and it's Soapy Bear. And then people make Soapy Bear Hangout World and they just steal a bunch of shit, duct tape it in there, and that's the popular thing. And that's what we saw so many times. I was like, why is this popular? And it's like, well, because the one word is popular. I'm like, damn. Like, you make a Five Nights at Freddy's or what's the one, Has Been Hotel, you make that popular. You steal all the stuff, you don't do any development of your own, and you just duct tape the name on it, popular. Trending for a little bit, and then gone. You do enough of them, a little bit more trending, gone. That's the analytics monster that we live in. You make a Lord of the Rings themed world, Bunch of Lord of the Rings fans come in there, but it's only going to be 40,000 divided by that popularity. If half of VR chat users are into Lord of the Rings, 40,000 tops divided by 2, then you get 20,000 tops. And if only a couple of those people, I don't know, support you, maybe you get, I don't know, 20, 30 supporters. Maybe if you're lucky, you get 100 supporters from doing a Lord of the Rings world and they all pay $5 a month. And you're right back there saying, well, I spent all month working and now I make $500 a month. And if I spend all next month working, maybe I can do another fan base and maybe make it to 1,000 a month and lose a couple of the old users. Now maybe I'll be at 750 a month. After 6 months of doing this, if you do it just perfect, you might make enough to sustain yourself. And that's a might. You might make enough to sustain yourself if you're living well. It's a train wreck. And that's if you're playing the algorithm, doing everything everybody wants you to do. And if you want to do anything of your own, it's off the rails. You have to be popular before you do anything on your own. So again, all roads lead back to the biggest platform is Steam. You have to publish on Steam. You have to do games. It has to be accessible to everybody, so you can't do VR games. You're stuck with web browser games. You're stuck with top-down side scrollers. You're stuck with the generic games that everybody's making, and then you have to combat everybody else's and try to make the games within there. It's crazy. And now you have Unity making updates, doing new things. You got to be up on the latest technology. If you want to get a job in any of these big companies, you have to be able to prove that you've done XYZ games. If you haven't published a game, then there's nothing to show for it because there's no metrics. If you publish a game and it does well, then you don't need to work at another company. You can work for yourself. If you publish a game and it doesn't do well, the company won't hire you. It's like, well, maybe they'll have to see something that was potentially going to do well, but it didn't. And they would hire you for that. I don't know. But anywhere I go, they're like, well, you don't have a 5-year degree in this. Because I spent the last 5 years doing it, not going to school to do it. So I got hands-on experience in the marketplace. I've been in the meetings with people in Singapore. I've been in the meetings with people in Moscow. I've been in the meetings with representatives from China. And we've sat down with people from Japan to look at office spaces so we can fly over to Japan to meet Microsoft in Japan because they won't meet with you in the US because that's not how we do things in the US for some effing reason. And we do it. We do it all online. And I go to a company and I say, I'd be interested in working here as a dirt scraper for your company. And nobody even sees you. They say, well, what'd you do? What'd you do in the past? And if I give them a list of stuff I've done, they're like, that's not real stuff. You're not making real money. And I can't show them the crypto because that doesn't exist. It's all make believe. So I'm just a ghost at this point. And if I tell anybody my story, it goes nowhere. So I record a video like this and I put it on YouTube and it will sit and it will rot within the algorithm because nobody wants to sit there for 40 minutes watching somebody pour their heart out about why their company doesn't function in the US. And that is where we are today. I will go back to streaming. I will put this on hold. Me and my developer will publish our game. We'll see where that goes from there. If you made it this far, thank you. Thank you greatly. Appreciate every second.